My name is Susan, and I want to share something that has weighed heavily on my heart for years. It's not easy to talk about, but maybe by sharing this, someone out there will feel less alone. I married James 7 years ago. He's a wonderful man, compassionate, strong, and devoted to his family. James has a daughter named Emily. She was 16 when I became her stepmother. At first, Emily and I had a distant relationship. She was quiet and reserved, and I didn't want to push her too hard. Losing her mother at a young age had left a mark, and I knew she needed time to adjust to having me in her life. James worked long hours as a contractor, often leaving before sunrise and returning late at night. That meant Emily and I were left to navigate our relationship mostly on our own. I did my best to make the house feel warm and welcoming, cooking her favorite meals and making sure she knew I was there if she needed anything. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table, I asked, "How was school today, Emily?" She shrugged and said, "It was fine," without looking up from her plate. I smiled and said, "If you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here." She gave me a small nod before heading to her room. Months passed, and slowly, Emily began to open up. She started telling me about her classes, her friends, and her dreams for the future. I was overjoyed to see her becoming more comfortable around me. I wanted to be the kind of support system she deserved, especially since her mother was no longer there to guide her. But then, things started to change. One night, James was working late, and Emily and I were sitting on the couch watching a movie. She turned to me and said, "You've been so good to me, Susan." I laughed softly and replied, "Of course, Emily. I care about you." But her gaze lingered, and something about the way she looked at me made me uneasy. "What's wrong, Emily?" I asked. "Nothing," she said quickly, looking away. From that night on, the way Emily interacted with me began to shift. She started spending more time near me, helping me with chores, sitting closer on the couch, or finding reasons to be in the same room. At first, I thought it was her way of showing gratitude, but soon, I couldn't ignore the subtle changes in her demeanor. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in the living room when Emily came in and sat down beside me. She picked up one of James's shirts and began folding it. "You're amazing, Susan," she said softly. "You've made this house feel alive again." I felt a strange mix of emotions, pride, confusion, and a hint of fear. "Thank you, Emily," I said cautiously. Over the next few weeks, Emily's behavior became harder to ignore. She would linger in the kitchen while I cooked, complimenting me in ways that felt different. "You're so thoughtful," she said one day. "I don't know what Dad and I would do without you." It wasn't just her words. It was the way she looked at me, like she wanted something I couldn't give. One evening, while James was out of town for work, Emily and I were having dinner together. We laughed about something trivial, and for a moment, I felt at ease. But then, Emily reached across the table and put her hand over mine. I froze. "Emily," I said gently, pulling my hand away. "We're family. You don't have to thank me for being here." She looked hurt but didn't say anything. That night, I lay awake, replaying the moment in my mind. Was I imagining things? Or was there something deeper going on? The days that followed were tense. I tried to keep my distance, but Emily seemed determined to stay close. If I was in the garden, she would come out to join me. If I was cleaning, she would offer to help. Her words grew more affectionate, and her gestures more intimate. One evening, while I was tidying up the kitchen, Emily came in and leaned against the counter. "You're always so busy," she said. "You never take time for yourself." "There's always something to do," I replied, hoping she would leave. Instead, she stepped closer and touched my arm. "You deserve to be happy, Susan," she said softly. My heart raced. "Emily," I said firmly, stepping back. "This isn't appropriate. I'm your stepmother." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "But I can't help how I feel." I was stunned. I didn't know what to say or how to react. All I could do was walk away, locking myself in my bedroom to gather my thoughts. The next few days were unbearable. I avoided Emily as much as possible, but she didn't stop trying to talk to me. She would apologize, saying she didn't mean to upset me, but her presence alone made me feel like I was suffocating. When James came home from his trip, I felt a sense of relief. But I also knew I couldn't keep this secret forever. I loved James and wanted to protect our family, but I didn't know how to navigate the storm brewing in our home. That evening, as James worked in his study, Emily came into the kitchen. "I'm sorry, Susan," she said quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you." I turned to her and said, "Emily, you need to move past this. It's not healthy for either of us. You're a bright, talented young woman with your whole life ahead of you. Focus on that." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away. For now, things seem to have settled. But the silence feels fragile, like the calm before a storm. I still haven't told James, and I don't know if I ever will. Some secrets are too heavy to share.